Welcome to the Mostly Star Wars podcast. Today we are going to be talking about all things A New Hope. So, episode 4 of the beginning of the trilogy, the original trilogy. Super excited to jump into the original trilogy. We're going to be
Uh-oh. Did we lose him?
Did we lose him? Uh-oh. Well, that's good timing. All right, well, while he tries to reconnect, we're going to be talking to New Hope, and one thing I want to shout out before we start beginning.
Oh, is he?
Are you back? Technical difficulties, gents. I don't see your video. But, so, before we get started here, having some technical difficulties right as we get started, always fun. You see in the description, join our Discord if you want to talk all things Star Wars, share memes, ask questions. It's a good, fun environment. And then also, if you want to support us, join the Patreon there. We had our first member this last little bit. Thank you to Togo Bap as our first Patreon member. We greatly appreciate that. That helps us very much to keep this going. And so, we also have all of our Twitters, which are on the screen, as well as other channels where we do other projects as well. Sorry, Q, if you kind of want to take over, I'm going to get Josiah back in here.
All right. Well, again, we appreciate everybody who enjoys this podcast. We try to make it fun and enjoyable for everyone, and we appreciate the support we've gotten in many ways from our community that we're growing here, and we really appreciate it. I think we have Josiah back on picture. Josiah, are you back?
I don't know. Am I back?
Oh, there he goes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but happy
Internet
to be back.
drop out or something?
Must have, yeah.
All right, well, we were just, we mentioned all the Patreon stuffs and everything,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Awesome.
So, I was thinking where we could start is what changed for you watching A New Hope after watching the Obi-Wan Kenobi show? Oh, and he's
gone again. I don't really want to start too much of the podcast without him. We need to bounce off our ideas off each other, but okay. Focus on me because I don't know what we're doing.
Well, okay, so
we need to get Josiah back in here.
We can kind of give him a little bit, but we also don't want to leave too much dead air, you know?
Yeah, I understand. Hello?
Okay, now am I back?
Hello there.
Yeah,
I have no idea what's going on.
I
Must
see
be
you,
my internet, I guess.
But yeah, you're a little fuzzy and... All right, well, I was in the middle of asking what changed for you when watching A New Hope after seeing the Obi-Wan show. I think...
Well, yeah, I could jump in since I'm on, and hopefully I don't drop. But yeah, I think it was a big difference. I've watched these films so many times, but after the Obi-Wan series and jumping in again, kind of like we had mentioned in previous podcasts, it's pretty crazy. Like when you think of now this new chunk of canon that we never had before, the everything that Obi-Wan had been through was already crazy. Kind of watching the prequel trilogy and then jumping in, you get a lot more backstory. You understand the character so much more. But I think with the show, I think even more it just drives home, the heartbreak and everything that Obi-Wan went through. And so even though he's really like this, space wizard, kind of like, otherworldly, I guess you can say, crazy hermit guy, right? You start to understand a little bit more of everything he went through. And I kind of thought it was funny now, kind of seeing how Obi-Wan really wanted to have this connection with Luke from a young age, and he was kind of held back, right? And so I think it's kind of funny in this one.
Oh, and he's gone again.
Sorry, if you kind of want to continue his thought, just I will continue to work on this. Yeah, Obi-Wan, I liked.
It comes back in for a second, and then it's gone again.
Oh man.
I see you currently. Sorry, you were saying where Obi-Wan where he is at this point.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I cut off, but yeah, I was saying I think this is kind of funny because you can kind of see Obi-Wan really wanted to have a connection with him, while he was younger, and in some ways already start training him, and then on this one, it's basically like, oh, well, they're dead now, so you're coming with me.
Yeah, and I think for me, what changed the most is actually Owen and Beru, where you kind of look at them not as just people in the way of Luke's progress and going out into the galaxy and making his own choices, but more of they're just loving parents who care about him. They're not just babysitting him until he's time to grow up and move out. And so it makes that, not only that, but it adds to, you have to know that they didn't just go down quietly. They went with a fight. And that's all you think about. The battle they must have had, it just makes it all the more tragic. I kind of wonder how many stormtroopers they took out before before that. And that's falling. And so, and then the music there, it adds to it, the drama, and if you think about all that, it just perfectly adds to all that. And so you can kind of look at them with a new light, really. Especially Beru, because you can tell that she's like the sensible one. And she says, well, he can't stay here forever. All of his friends are gone, and but, and then it kind of reminds me of when Obi-Wan is talking to Luke, and he's like, well, I can't get involved in all this, and he goes, that's your uncle talking.
Yeah.
And so that, it was just a real good, I think, look at them and how much they have changed. Hey, what's up, Send It?
Yeah, I think another thing.
That's good.
Yeah, I think another good thing with that to kind of see with both of them is, that's the way Owen was raised, right? We got his backstory in the prequel trilogy. He grew up, just working the farm, right? So he's just a farmer, and he's raising his son the only way he knows how, the way that he was raised. And you can kind of see that logic.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. He's just a farmer. It kind of reminds me of Galen Erso. And he's like, farming, a man of your talents? And he's like, it's a peaceful life. Although life on Tatooine's probably never fully peaceful. The desert is hard on you regardless. even if no one else is.
Yeah. I thought one of the biggest ways I looked at it differently was just Obi-Wan's character himself. I mean, before the show, you always thought of Obi-Wan as the stoic Jedi who never gave up, who was always the Jedi that was just waiting to do what he needed to do, and that really wasn't the case. He had lost his way pretty badly at the beginning of the show for those 10 years, right? And you could see in a way that he was fighting with Vader, that he was completely with the Force at that point. He wasn't like when he first fought Vader in Episode 3, where he was, he's not in touch with the Force, and even though he was pretty much expecting to be killed by Vader, he wasn't afraid at all. He was completely in touch with the Force, and he was ready to do what he needed to do.
Yeah. And I kind of like that, and you can see the contrast in their fight. I know a lot of people like look at the prequels and everything and say, "Oh, that fight was so lame," and I think the fight really wasn't a fight. Even both of them are kind of past that. That's kind of the whole point of why the Emperor told Vader, if you keep chasing after him, you're going to be distracted constantly. And so I think even Vader has kind of moved on from their squabble to now it's just and I still, one thing I thought was interesting is a lot of people have always pointed out, well, this doesn't make sense when he said, when I left you, I was but the learner. And I still think that means when he left him on Mustafar, when he left the Jedi, he was a learner. I don't think that doesn't reference their fight only 10 years ago.
I don't know, because I could still see Obi-Wan kind of taught him a lesson there, that he's still not as strong as he thought he was in that fight. So, I mean,
yeah,
he could still be talking about that. But I guess you could say, when I left you, and when he left Obi-Wan, it could be a reference to when he left the Order, when he left his side.
because he didn't.
Not
if you
a
think about it,
battle, but like when that decision was made to leave the Jedi.
If you think about it, because at the end of the episode 6 of the Kenobi show, he didn't leave him. Obi-Wan left him. Obi-Wan went away. He walked away.
That's how it was on Mustafar too.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that you could also think about is if he was talking about being a learner as far as the dark side.
Yeah.
So he was still learning the way.
Dark side.
Yeah, and then now he's been able to master it.
Now he was. So when he left Obi-Wan, he was an apprentice of the dark side, and now he's a master of the dark side, kind of thing.
That could also be a possibility.
Yeah, I could see that. I like that. I like, because the whole fight is, it's symbolic, and because he also tells him, you're only because Obi-Wan's response there is, you're only a master of evil, Darth.
Yeah.
And so he's still saying, hey, you were no Jedi master.
He's still rubbing that in.
Yeah.
An interesting thought on that line is he doesn't say his name. He just calls him Darth. Like, he doesn't care that his name's Vader. He knows Anakin is dead. That's what Vader told him. He killed Anakin, and so Obi-Wan doesn't even respect him enough to say his name. He just he uses his title.
Well, that's kind of why he calls him Darth at the end of the episode of Kenobi, is because Vader has told him that he killed Anakin. Vader killed Anakin.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
why he looks at him as just a puppet of evil.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why he calls him by his title.
Yeah.
So
Another thing that I'd like, I don't know why I just thought of this, but
Perfect timing, Josiah.
it like really stuck out.
Okay,
And
hold
I
on,
feel
hold on,
like every
hold on.
time
You,
I feel like it's every time
you start to
Josiah?
speak.
I think that's what it is. It's like every time I start to speak, it cuts out.
you're like, you started a sentence, you got like 3 words in, and then you were gone. You're like going to say something important, and then just nothing.
I feel like that in a way is kind of a good thing because then it always seems like I'm about to say something really good, even if it isn't.
Nice.
But no, I don't. Okay, so I don't know if you heard it, but what I was gonna say is I feel like it's funny, like now rewatching it when Obi-Wan wears his cloak, he has it like with the pointy top, right? So he like really looks like a wizard, And I guess I still never really thought of it so much like the cloaks and stuff, especially through the prequels. I never thought of them like that, and they never really like stood up like a cone so much. But like
Yeah.
it definitely was like Obi-Wan is like definitely like a wizard.
Well, that's what Owen called him. Lost wizard in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
That's so wizard, Annie.
Yeah, see, that's a good thing in Star Wars.
So, I was gonna say something about the fight. Oh, the fight. So, because I look at that fight as being more symbolic, and it's not necessarily for Obi-Wan and Vader at all, really.
Mm-hmm.
Obi-Wan sacrifices himself for Luke and Leia, and it's not a sacrifice like, hey, I'm surrendering my life so you can escape kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of, this is your fight. You are the adults taking this world now, and this is your fight. And it really symbolizes, he's showing them what needs to be done. If you need to go to this extent of sacrificing your life for this cause, it's that important.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just showing them this is what needs to be done. If you need to, you need to go this far.
Mm-hmm.
And so I that's the way I've always looked at that fight. I get it's a little slow. It's not. I've seen the reimagined one. It's cool, but I just don't think it fits. I think this more fits the tone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, this is an imagined universe, and it had to start somewhere, and the technology just wasn't what it is today, obviously. And
Oh yeah,
if you can't enjoy it because of that, then I don't know. There's other movies you can watch, but
there are some instances.
It's just something you need to look past. I mean, it was amazing for its time, so.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one thing I noticed on my rewatch, and I had never noticed it before, but I have noticed some of those older. This is obviously the beginning of the building of the universe. So when they find the sandcrawler and all the Jawas are dead, and they find out that their stormtroopers destroyed them, and Luke goes, if they trace the robots to the sandcrawler to the Jawas, then they'll trace them back home. And I was caught off guard by, he said robots.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I've never thought about that before. I've never heard that line. I mean, I've heard that line, but I've just never caught it that way, because obviously in Star Wars, you would never call a robot. They're droids.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so I was watching and I was like, oh, okay. Some instances you can see that this is the beginning, and
Hmm.
it was just, there are some things like that.
Mhm. And then I think also the dialogue where he says that Darth Vader was a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing. Like people have kind of went back and forth once again, like you've brought up before, like headcanon on how that could work or make sense. But the
Yeah.
reality is, I think, like what you said, it was just kind of a miss in the script. It would have been better if he said, Sith Lord, or Lord of the Sith or whatever,
Hmm.
instead of saying that he is a Jedi, because obviously Darth Vader's not a Jedi.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's also in when Tarkin is talking to Vader. He says,
Hmm.
the Jedi are all dead. Their light has gone, or their fire has gone out in the universe. You, my friend, are the last of their religion.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah. It's just
So
there's just terms that I don't think were known of yet or decided on at that point.
Hmm.
and they all seem fine. If you were to when the movie was made, everything was said was fine.
Yeah.
Hmm.
If you know if you take in just the movie just itself and say they're all Jedi, I mean they all basically are. They're Force users, and I think that's to the galaxy. The galaxy, I don't even know if they know Sith exists, really.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I don't believe not very many people knew that the Emperor was a Sith Lord.
Yeah.
And so, to them, the galaxy only knew Force users as Jedi.
Hmm.
And so it
Yeah,
kind of
that's
makes
true.
sense to say, and it would just, even though they're opposite beliefs, but you would still, a Force user, you would lump them in together.
Yeah, that kind of dates back to the old Republic era when, like the Knights of the Republic game, the first one, it takes place during what is called the Jedi Civil War. Right, it's
Hmm.
the Jedi versus the Sith, and there's thousands of Jedi on both sides, Jedi and Sith, fighting each
Yeah.
other. But the
And at that time,
galaxy
they were
just sees
called
it.
Dark Jedi.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and so the galaxy just sees them all as Jedi fighting for power, even though
Hmm.
there's Jedi and there's Sith, but to the galaxy, Force users are Jedi.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think, kind of going along to your guys' point too, when when we first see Leia, she's basically saying, this isn't gonna stand. You can't do this to me. So she's basically relying on Palpatine, in a way, to be like, because who's she's gonna, bring a grievance to? She's gonna bring a grievance, like, look at what
To the Imperial
Vader did
Senate.
to. Right, exactly. Which in essence is Palpatine. So, like, in a way, like you're saying, she's basically still relying on the fact that things like this can't happen. Do they happen? Obviously, even like Luke says, like, do I like the Empire? No, I hate them, but there's nothing we can do about it. Kind of in a way, you're still
The Jyn Erso
you're
effect.
working with what you have.
Yeah, it's
That,
not a problem if you don't look up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that line. And that is another movie that it so much adds to this movie.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's such um sorry, I keep losing Josiah there.
yeah.
Um
When I was watching the space battle, I'm a sucker for space battles, and I was like, oh, I just want to watch Rogue One again with all that,
Yeah.
with all the old audio that they took from unused clips from A New Hope.
Hmm.
yeah, the uh I feel like some of the two best space battles are the Death Star and the Death Star 2 in Return of the Jedi. And I get why the prequels kind of stayed away from that, more or less because that's just not how the story was. The story didn't involve that kind of stuff. But I am a little disappointed that the sequel trilogy was as lackluster uh, uh, at that.
Yeah.
Especially because it seemed like we were gonna get that big battle in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but it was like everybody showed up, and then it was over because they were
Yeah,
so good. They won.
but what's also disappointing, what was a little slightly disappointing for me on that wasn't the fact of the battle itself, but everyone shows up and then we're still just focused on Poe. We see the Millennium Falcon in a couple shots, but it's like, where are these other ships? I want to see some of these other ships in action. They could have just
Mhm.
they could have added 10 minutes of a battle up there, and it just would have been sick. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm getting away from the point on A New Hope here. But the A New Hope battle. Well, one, the music, especially
Oh,
when it's just the four TIE fighters
Mhm.
attacking the Millennium Falcon. Dun 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 dun. Dun. It's so good.
yeah.
Mhm.
I just have the movie pulled up. I'm just gonna just check it. The space battle in this movie is 12 minutes long
Yeah.
from when they,
Hmm.
lock Espo's attack position to when the Death Star blows up. That's a good.
Mhm.
That's a good long portion of the movie.
Mhm.
Yeah. The only thing is unlike uh with A New Hope, it's one of the few movies that really only has one thing going on at one time. And actually, Empire Strikes Back has a lot of one thing or two, Luke and then the group.
Mhm.
And it's all not until Return of the Jedi where you get the three separate things going on with the battle on Endor, and then
Space
the
battle.
space battle with Lando, and then Luke, the Emperor and Vader.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And so it is interesting to do because I think of like the Phantom Menace, and they have all those separate things going all at one time. And but here, the only thing that's going on during the battle of the Death Star is the few times they go back to the Rebel base and the few times Tarkin talks.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
all still focused around this one thing going on, the space battle.
Yeah. So Presto says that it's a classic, and yes, it's pretty simply written when you think about it. He says just good guys fighting bad guys with magic, space magic, and space fights thrown in, which I agree. It's also the coming of age adventure story
Hmm.
of learning to go out into the galaxy as well. And so yeah, it's pretty simple, and you know George's famous words that Star Wars is for 12-year-olds. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, and this is probably the most classic version of that
Yeah.
in its simplest form. And so, but yeah, the space battles, the tech, the way they did these movies was incredible. And in fact, I don't know, I know Q, you watched the ILM trailer. Were you
Hmm.
able to watch it, Josiah?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
I
super hyped for that.
actually think that that could be something we could cover on here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Even
Oh yeah.
just
Big time.
even if it's not all Star Wars, we could throw in some Jurassic Park and stuff and all the ILM Pixar stuff. I think that would be a fun topic for us to discuss on here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. They did such an amazing job with this film. I mean,
Do-
uh, special effects studios weren't a thing at that time. Like
Mhm.
Yeah,
it was all in house by a very small group, if not just one person for all the big uh, film studios. And
Yeah.
then George was like, well, I need all of this, and he basically creates ILM, or hires these guys to create ILM, and just groundbreaking work they did for this film.
Yeah, I think the other thing to think about with this film, am I still there? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Is the fact that so this was the first Star Wars movie, right? So every single character, every single person, every alien, every animal, every ship, everything was brand new, seen for the first time. And I think that's something that, like Quinton had said, the going back, like there's a lot of it that's kind of like, ah, man, that's the CGI is a little weird, or the fights are slow, or whatever it might be. Like that's something that you can't ever take from it. Is that was the induction of the world into Star Wars, and meeting all those characters for the first time. I think going back to how it's better, it's so much better now that we saw the prequels, now that we see the Obi-Wan show and some of these
Mhm.
other shows that are just it's making it so much better because we're we already love those characters, but now we're getting to see them in a more modern times setting, a more modern, like with modern effects and things like that.
Yeah.
It really, even like going back to it, I wasn't focused at all on like any of the effects or CGI that was a little weird. Like I didn't even pay attention to that at all. I was just remembering how much I loved all these characters and seeing them for the first time, how much I was like, it's perfect. Han and Leia, like their interaction is perfect. Han and Luke, it's amazing. Chewbacca is, falling in love with him for the first time. Peter is amazing. He's one of the greats. And so that was awesome to see that. And I think the other thing is the droids. Like, I don't think that at that time, I wasn't even born yet, but at that time, I don't,
Mhm.
I can't think of any other movies around that time that had droids like as, focal points of movies that actually, made a difference and you actually ended up caring about them.
I still think, even when I watch it today, and obviously I didn't get to watch it in theaters, or at least not when it came out.
Yeah.
I did get to see, I think, A New Hope and Empire when I was a little kid, when they did the re-release in like 97.
Mm-hmm.
So I did get to see those in theater, and I was only 6 or 7. So
Mm-hmm.
I was real young. But when you watch it, you can feel the sense of wonder that it really provided. The opening scene with the Star Destroyer and just
Mm-hmm.
the sound, and let
Mhm.
me tell you, if you ever get a chance to watch it now with the Dolby Atmos
Oh yeah.
remaster, it is so good. It is so good. But I think that scene, the Death Star and the blockade runner, and just the opening scene is just so good. And then the other scene that I think they've tried to recreate it. JJ tried to do it in The Force Awakens. The cantina scene. When you go into that cantina, and there's all those different aliens, and that's just, they're just hanging out, drinking, playing music, and you're just all these different crazy. That's where you feel like, okay, you're in a different universe.
Yeah.
You're really somewhere else, and
Mm-hmm.
yet all these different species of characters. You can still feel the wonder of the show,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just the set designs and the stuff that they had, the costumes that they had to make, and they made so well,
Mm-hmm.
and yet so cheaply.
Mhm.
Mark Hamill has a quote. Do you guys remember about how cheap it was? I'll have
Mm.
to look it up. Someone else can. So well, the lightsaber was basically just taken off of a handle of an old camera. It was basically a handle of an real old camera, and they glued a couple pieces to it, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, it was someone who was doing set design for The Force Awakens, and he got to talk to Harrison Ford, and he was asking like what are some things that they should do to get what are there some things that they should do to make the sets better and more effective. And one of the things he said is on the Millennium Falcon, he said switches. Put switches in. He said back in the day in A New Hope, they didn't have enough money to make actual switches of the components on the Millennium Falcon. There was no actual switches in it because they left those parts out just to cut every ounce they could while making the movie. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was the set designers like, oh, we can do that. We've got the budget when they're making The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, this movie is just it's where it started. It's where
Mm-hmm.
everyone realized their love for Star Wars, the magic that is a lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing I was watching, and some of the blasters, they look more opaque.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, after watching it, I'm kind of like, I kind of wish they still were more like that. They maybe not more real, but more. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but I like the look. And one thing I've always noticed too is in those older days,
Were you
you
talking
can
the blasters themselves, or like the blaster bolts they fired?
the bolts,
Mm-hmm.
because they're a little more see-through and they don't quite glow as much. But one thing I've always noticed too, though, when making these movies, the effects of the lightsaber, it's clearly obvious that red is a much easier color for them to add.
Yeah.
Because when you look at Vader's lightsaber and you look at Obi-Wan's, you can clearly see that red was easier to add in
Mm-hmm.
than the blue was.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think just since we're talking about blasters, I that is another thing I kind of noticed on this, and it gave me some flashbacks to like Padme, but like in like the blasters that they have on Naboo. But like Leia's
Mm-hmm.
blaster is like sleek and sexy, and then like the other blasters are like kind of like chunky, like obviously they're military grade or whatever, but like the blaster that she has are like, oh man, that's a nice blaster there.
Yeah.
It's just everything from Naboo is like that.
Yeah.
I feel like Alderon's not really any different either.
Yeah.
It's very nice and
Mhm.
clean. And then the Empire has to go and destroy it. Jerks.
Oh, that was so hard to watch. Like, you know it's coming, but man, seeing
Mhm.
Alderaan more in
Yeah.
Obi-Wan show was just
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah, and I feel like it comes so quick in this movie. I don't remember it just being so fast, like I don't know. That was kind of crazy to me too. I was like, man, it's already that time when I was watching it recently.
I mean, it's an hour into the movie.
Yeah,
Time just flies when
but
you're watching Star Wars.
that's true.
yeah.
Mm.
Uh, I like the medal ceremony. The music is so good,
Yeah,
and I think it's it's interesting that they would even have that kind of ceremony, and I think that's again just because it was written the way it was, and it wasn't necessarily thought of as a bigger universe that it turned into.
yeah,
Because my first thought when I was watching it is like, why are they doing them? I mean, they won a victory, but the Empire is still out there. Like
yeah,
the
Yeah.
Imperial Senate doesn't exist anymore. This is just like a battle.
yeah,
Yeah.
Not only that, but I'm also like, wait, is this still on Yavin? Did they take the time to do a medal ceremony of all these people when the Empire knows where their base is?
right.
Before move, it doesn't look like Hoth, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
I was assuming that's where it was. And the other thing that when I was watching that, and maybe you guys felt the same way, was I feel like it was showing how big the rebellion is. And
Yeah,
then now going back and watching like Obi-Wan, the show, I feel like that was a cooler scene. That was like more, I don't know, like when I saw that, it just like gave me goosebumps because you saw basically where the beginning was with, the path, right? And like
mm-hmm.
just a few people all in hiding. And then now, what is this, 9 years later, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we got 9 years later, and now they have organization. There's, you could see in the uniforms that there's different statuses. There's
mm-hmm.
people have set roles, and they almost have their full on military now, right? So like I was like, man, it was kind of cool to see, just coming off the Obi-Wan series to this. It's like, wow, that's pretty awesome, and obviously we know that Leia is a big part in leading that.
Yeah, and I just I love Leia in this because you can totally, and that's why she was so good in Obi-Wan was all the sass and the
Yeah.
uh just the fact that Leia is willing to talk the way she talks to Tarkin.
Yeah.
Or
Like
Vader.
he's gonna
Even
enter.
Vader, yeah.
Yeah, but I thought your foul stench when I was brought on board.
Yeah,
Like
that's the
she just
best.
calls him stinky.
Yeah.
So
It
one of the
doesn't
most
even.
dangerous men in the galaxy.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and she just nope, not even gonna put up with you.
Hmm.
Incredible
Yeah,
bravery.
yeah, for sure. And there's like two things also that I noticed. I was watching it yesterday with my wife, and we were both like, man, seeing like Carrie Fisher this young, it's like, man, the actress that they chose as the little girl, like,
Mm-hmm.
man, that's so good. Like, because I think when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, I could kind of see that. But I think now seeing her, this young, yeah, and then you kind of compare the two. It's like, man, they did really good in choosing her. Like
For
almost
sure.
like the facial expressions and little things. I'm like, man, yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I definitely agree that, and I think that the writing on her was done excellently.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then I
Um,
think another thing is they have one of the officers at some point. Um, he when they were saying about her giving it up, and he said something along the lines of, I told you she'd never do that or whatever. She'd never knowingly do this or
Vader says, "I told you you should never consciously betray the rebellion."
yeah.
after they destroyed Alderaan.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
and she
I
gave
was
up
like,
Dantooine.
yeah. And so I thought, well, obviously, you know, there's a backstory there because Vader already can see through her and is like, no, like,
Hmm.
you know, you're traitor, and you are part of the
Well, I mean,
rebellion and stuff, So yeah,
that's another
I
thing
just
that Rogue One made interesting because
yeah,
obviously he knows. He's like, I just watched you fly away. Don't even.
yeah,
I know you're
yeah,
part of the rebellion.
yeah,
Do you
exactly.
guys think? I just this just came to mind. Do you think we'll get to see the rebel base on Dantooine in Andor? How cool would that be? Because they said the remnants of an
Yeah,
old base.
Hmm.
That
I
would be
feel like
so
that
cool. I want to see
it
that.
would be because they've actually like that's not even the only time. I think there's a few other times that they've mentioned it, in like other Star Wars pieces, whether it's like just, comics and things like that. So I think that that would be super cool for definitely like any hardcore fan, to be
Yeah,
able to see that because it'd be such like a cool, a tie-in to once again making that line like mean something,
well, I love it because um, in the Knights of the Republic games, Dantooine, there's a Jedi enclave there, and that's a large part of your story is on
Hmm.
Dantooine, and
Hmm.
that would be so cool to see it live action, see what they get to show us.
Hmm.
I'd be curious just because the line makes it seem like the base was deserted,
Mm-hmm.
but if it was deserted because of the Empire, wouldn't they know that? Wouldn't the
Yeah,
Empire like, yeah, we already had we knew there was a base there. We destroyed it. Or
yeah, for sure.
It
so
seems more
why did
like
they
it was
leave?
something that was, yeah, they must have abandoned it for some reason, but before the Empire discovered it. Maybe
What
they
I
were
can
worried
think
the
of,
Empire was on their trail or something.
what I can think of is kind of something along the lines of what happened in Rebels with the
Hmm.
spider-like creatures,
Hmm.
and there was, oh man, you can imagine, oh that would be so cool. What if there's like a horror movie in Star Wars where they're on the Dantooine base, and yeah, it's abandoned and just, oh that would be so cool.
We got
Why
that in the
it's abandoned?
Mandalorian with the spiders. Remember
Yeah, but like,
the horror episode
I mean, it's sweet.
and Grogu eating eggs.
I don't really like, I like science fiction horror, like scary aliens and stuff, and but not. So I think that would be kind of cool of something like that because there's got to be a reason. I mean, they made an entire movie off of one line in the crawl of A New Hope. That's what Rogue One is.
Yeah,
And
Hmm.
so, well, they could easily make a whole movie or a whole show off of one line in an episode, an abandoned base at Dantooine.
Hmm.
That would be pretty cool.
yeah,
And
I
like
would like to see that. That'd be nice.
that would be
See
fun.
what the base on Dantooine was all about.
Hmm.
It could even be something as simple as they were growing and needed something larger and more hidden. That's why they moved to Yavin 4.
Yeah.
Hmm. They needed like a long courtyard for everybody to stand when they give out medals.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. And take that time. I mean, see that what that makes me think of is like, were they giving out medals after the Force Awakens? And see, because they just showed up, they're like, we know where your base is now. We're gonna show up and destroy it, and you
Hmm.
get the start of the Last Jedi, which that makes more sense than giving out medals.
Yeah.
But it's also, again, the hero's journey.
Yeah, it was.
The
I mean, it's in the movie because it's the triumph of good over evil, the celebration at the end.
hmm
You know, this is where it all started. It had to have a celebration. They beat the bad guys at this time,
and at
and
that
Hmm.
time
it's a good conclusion to the movie.
and when the movie was written at that time, there wasn't plans for a sequel, at least not
Well, I mean,
fully.
he had plans.
he had ideas and he had plans, but it wasn't written.
Yeah.
You
he
know
had
how some
all
movies.
he had all three. He had plans for all three movies, and that's why when he made the deal with Fox to do the movie, he made sure that he got all the rights. He
To the
got rights
sequels.
to the two most important things that made him successful: rights to the sequels, and
Merchandise.
all rights to the movies and the merchandise. Because at the time, merchandising was nothing for movies. There was studios didn't even really care about it. Could you
Yeah.
imagine?
Yeah,
Giving
I
up all
mean,
the Star
look at
Wars
all the stuff, all
merchandise.
the merchandise that we've
Mm-hmm.
all spent. Toys
Mm-hmm.
Toys for Star Wars
Ungodly
have
amount
made
of money.
toys for Star Wars have made more than the movies ever could have.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he was famous for saying that by hook or by crook, he was going to finish the story. He was going to do all three movies, no matter what it took him.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there was
Well,
definitely
yeah.
plans for more movies.
Yeah, and I think just the fact that he wanted to eventually do the prequels, so I think all that he definitely had a plan for it. But I don't know if this is what you're saying, Tyler, but like he famously wouldn't write the scripts until like right before. He had it in his head of what he wanted to do, but yeah, he didn't have it written.
Yeah, and no, the merchandising. See, George understood the secret too about the merchandising. I think you can't. It can't be obvious, and I think that's some of the things that Disney hasn't figured out, like porgs. Obvious.
Oh, you mean in the
Obvious.
movies they plant things that will become merchandise?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I think of that, the biggest is in the original trilogy, the Ewoks. That is
Yeah.
that is the probably the most product placement that there can be, but they serve a great purpose to the story. You never feel like they're out of place. You
Yeah.
don't feel like they're just stuffed in there so that you can buy a teddy bear.
Yeah.
So, and that's I kind of think. So that's why George was such a master at it. That he's the action figures. You know, oh, what's the Star Wars parody? Spaceballs. Spaceballs. So when they were making that movie, they actually had to ask George if it was okay if they did it, and he gave them permission to do it on the one basis that there wouldn't be merchandise created for the movie. No action figures, no toys, none of that stuff, because he said the lawyers will say that it's too much like Star Wars and that you stole it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said you can make the movie, but you can't make the toys.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just the genius of George right there.
Yeah.
Well, we all know that music plays a huge role in Star Wars. And at this time in 1977, when the movie came out, was a huge disco era for that's what it was in the 70s. Disco was huge, and everybody said that George was taking a big risk not having, popular disco music in his movie. Could you
Mm-hmm.
imagine what this movie would be like with that kind of music?
There wouldn't be anything. It would be a
The,
forgotten movie. I
I
don't think
think
I
I,
don't
I think the music plays a big enough role that there's a good chance it could have been. It doesn't because the music that's in it makes this timeless. It will always be
Mm-hmm.
good music, no
mm-hmm.
matter what. No matter what the fad is at the time, what music is popular. This will always be storytelling music.
Yes, and I agree with that because I sometimes I watch some other songs or other movies and I go, well, this who listened to this song? And and I
Mm-hmm.
think if you're gonna use normal artist music without writing a score unique to the movie, you have to basically use music that's already a classic.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you end up with songs that are popular for in 2020, but no one's heard of them in 2025. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just the thing. If you use disc, I think if you were to use disco music in this one, it would have been uber cheesy. I mean, just no one would have taken it seriously. And yeah, I just think it would have, the movie, the whole franchise would have not been one of the biggest franchises of all time. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the music just holds it together. And you hear some of the same music from this episode created in 1977 in the Obi-Wan show that just came out barely a month ago. And not even. And
Yeah.
because it just shows the timeless that is that music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you gotta eat up there, Togo Bap. They'd have, yeah. Send it says they'd have to cast John Travolta for the disco music. I think are you thinking about Grease there? Send it.
Oh
You know
man, he
that
could be. He said Hans Solo. He could be. He could be like Hans. But I think that would be, that could have very well happened. And I think the other thing is like as you progress in the story, even if you think of like Cloud City, they could have totally made like that a disco, you know? And like Lando like has everybody dancing, or he has like girls like you know, disco girls dancing like in some area or something. I could
I mean,
totally
I'm
have
sure
seen
there
that.
is.
I mean, there's the girls dancing is in Jabba's palace.
Yeah. And they have like the light up floor, you know, like the squares light up different.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness, that
man.
reminds me of that really cheesy Star Wars Dance Dance game that they did. Oh, it
Oh,
was one of the worst games ever. At least one of
Oh,
the
I missed
worst
it.
Star Wars projects. It's like it was for like the Xbox Connect,
Mm.
and it was it was terrible.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to watch, but yeah, it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
A lot
Yeah.
of people were considered for the role of Han Solo, though. Kurt Russell famously auditioned for it,
mm-hmm.
and Han Solo wasn't, or Han Solo, Harrison Ford wasn't even supposed to be auditioning for it. He was brought in to read lines to the other actors,
Who
Yeah.
were trying out
and
for Luke and Leia.
yeah, and they just ended up casting him. I think if you watch uh what's the
Empire of
doc
Dreams.
Empire of Dreams, that's what I'm looking for. If you watch that, I think the easiest one they say that to cast was Peter Mayhew, because all
Yeah.
he did was walk through the door and he said that's him.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Looks good. Yeah.
Yep.
I
You
like
meet the height requirement.
Yeah. I thought it was also good. I think it's like in the making of like bonus disc or something for this, but when they're talking about figuring out the right look for Chewbacca, I love that like right before the final one, the second to the last rendering ended up being Zeb from Rebels. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah,
That's
I do remember those Ralph McQuarrie
paintings.
drawings.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the great thing that Dave has done, is taken some of those inspirations and made them into real things too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. The droid was the assassin droid in Rebels,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
and yeah, the Ralph McQuarrie. Some of those old drawings are amazing.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
how he
Uh,
envisioned George's world was incredible. I mean, nobody had ever seen what Star Wars was, and here's Ralph making Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, by just what George told him to draw,
Yeah.
or just describing it to him, and he putting it on paper. It's
Hmm.
quite incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the chemistry between all the actors too was so good. You know, is the first movie out of so many, you know,
Hmm.
different Star Wars projects. It was just, you know, like watching it again, it just like hit me big time again how great all of them were together. I mean, um you know, just the interactions that they had and like all the lines just they hit right. You know, even it just the
Hmm.
popped into my head right now, but just watching the Thor movie, which I personally really enjoyed, but I will
The new one,
agree, yeah, the new one.
no spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers. But I will agree that, you know, there's specific lines that are said in there that just don't hit right, you know, and they have all the money in the world. You know, they have, you know, great actors going in. People already are expecting greatness. And this is the first movie. This is the first
Hmm.
Star Wars ever. And everything just hits right, you know, like the way they say it, you know, the looks and facial expressions and just like there's so many lines in this movie that are quotable because they're excellent. You know, it's just man, it was so good, and
So,
they played together great.
as you said that, I noticed one thing, and as a prequel guy, I've never noticed this before. But when they're flying away from Mos Eisley and they're under attack by the Star Destroyers, Han says, "This is where the fun begins."
Yeah.
And I was like, I think of that as an Anakin line,
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
and I thought that was funny, and I also I have a bad feeling about this. You know, the line that's in everyone.
Yeah.
Luke says it in this one,
Luke
but he
says
says,
it.
I have a very bad feeling about this,
Mhm.
and I was like, how did it get changed?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
And so those are a few lines that I was like, oh man, and you know, the same with the hello there. I mean,
Yeah.
those are all what you think of iconic, and you think of them from the prequels.
Yeah.
They're all in this movie.
Mhm.
Yeah, all the memes,
And so
basically.
they were
Yeah.
just Easter egging. I mean, George and George Lucas and Steven Spielberg are basically one of the originators of the Easter egg
Yeah.
and hiding that stuff. And
Mhm.
people don't even know that, didn't even realize that, because now it's a huge thing of like, did you catch all the Easter eggs?
Yeah.
And but back then
Man,
it
if
wasn't
you
really a thing.
yeah, I've seen some different YouTube videos about it where they like go back and kind of what we've been talking about, where you know George would take a little something, you know, that he either didn't use or used for something else and took it forward. And it's like, man, like you watch one of those things, they're like so many hours long because it's
Mm-hmm.
like almost like frame by frame. Oh, this door, they use this door in this movie or whatever, like, you know, 20 years later, like, oh, you see this tiny
Mm-hmm.
little thing, they use that for this. It's like almost everything they, you know, they were so good at taking those pieces. And I think that's why, kind of going back and seeing this, why it's so great, because they've done so good over the years of piecing it together, making it make sense, you know, that, you know, it makes sense. Whereas like when you go back and you start watching the making of this movie, there's so many things that were so close to not happening. Like even the fact of Vader, you know, needing a helmet, needing a mask,
Mhm.
whatever. That was just something
Mhm.
last minute. They're like, oh, he needs something that he can breathe in atmosphere or whatever, like that was something that
Yeah.
almost didn't happen. And now it's so huge part of the story, moving forward, where it's like, this was the beginning of now everything else had to tie in to what George had created like so many years ago.
I mean, Darth Vader only has 12 minutes of screen time in this movie, and he was basically instantly the greatest bad guy in all of cinema history. He's probably the most recognizable character,
He only has
other than maybe a stormtrooper.
he only has
Yeah.
8 minutes of screen time in A New Hope, so even less.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
he's just so iconic that, yeah, he's probably one of the most known characters.
Mm-hmm.
People who never watched Star Wars ever before know that Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
just that big of a moment. Like, if you don't know that, you've been
We
living
can't be
under
friends.
a rock. Whether you were born and out in the woods and you've never had internet your entire life.
Yeah. I think another funny thing, I don't know why this just jumped into my head, but talking once again when they come and they see, the Jawas, massacred basically, and then Obi-Wan says like, oh, these shots are too precise for the sand people or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, these are like stormtroopers or whatever. And I think it's funny moving forward that notoriously stormtroopers are horrible shots. And then from like, all the way back to Phantom Menace, they shot like a sniper shot, right? And took out an engine or whatever. Like, I mean, that was a good shot. And then, right, that was a sand people, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I could be wrong.
they hit
The pod
the
racer.
Yeah.
what was this? The wheel one. And he goes, "Foo," and he goes,
Yeah.
I don't care what universe you're from, that's gotta hurt.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, we got that, and then we have the, even, well, I mean, just in general, it's like I feel like they now have the sand people as like good shots, good hunters, and like kind of like a force to be reckoned with. And then they make fun of clone stormtroopers of their horrible shot. But it's funny, Obi-Wan's like, oh man, these are too precise for them. It has to be stormtroopers.
Yeah.
It's almost like a joke, because it's like, should be like, oh, these are too precise for stormtroopers.
I've seen that.
Horrible shots.
But I've also seen, they were probably told to not shoot them on the Death Star. I mean, obviously their idea was to get them to fly to their base.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that. Not only does Vader think about that, now you think, oh, maybe he learned that trick in the Obi-Wan show. But I also think what that
Just the thought that he learned that trick from Reva.
Oh yeah.
See, but I also think what's interesting to think of it the other side. Leia also learned that they use that trick. That's why she knows.
Yeah.
She knows that because she told us, you call that, he goes like, you call that easy, and she goes, they let us leave.
Mm-hmm.
They're tracking the ship. They let us go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
that's
so
true.
so you think about it, that's how she figured out that they like to use that trick, and that's why she knows that they're being tracked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my same thoughts too when I was watching it and kind of thinking back about it. I was like, oh man, that's like a direct connection that even watching the Obi-Wan show, I didn't put together until now rewatching this, that I was like, oh man, that's, totally a direct connection between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also done in the episode 4 of the Kenobi show that correlates to A New Hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Yeah, oh, there's so many good things, and it's kind of hard without us narrowing down on a specific topic to like where do we want to talk about? We want to talk about uh how everyone dislikes the special editions, George's revised or uh how you want to call it. I love the fact that he changed it so often, and that remember when they were doing when the 3D was a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and so they
Mm-hmm.
re-released the Phantom Menace in 3D. Well, the plan was to release all 6 of them in 3D, and that they were going to do them in stages. But then it got interrupted by the sale of it to Disney. But when they did that, they also remastered all 6 of them for the blue. No, I think it was the 4K Blu-ray. They had remastered everything for the 4K Blu-ray release, but they were just Disney just thought that they were all done by Lucasfilm.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until they released them on Disney Plus that people realized this cut once again was edited by George, and that's where you get the McClunky. He
Yeah.
added that to the 4K that Disney released, and they didn't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
He had edited and changed it, and so Disney hadn't even released it. They didn't know that they were releasing another edited version, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's just fun.
Well,
And
Yeah.
my biggest thing with the whole special editions and how much he's changed A New Hope, I honestly couldn't tell you what the original like theatrical version was like. It's been so
Yeah.
long since I've seen a VHS copy. Probably the only way you could see that is if you had an original VHS copy or whatever. I don't even know if they
Mm-hmm.
have VHS tapes in this late 70s. Was that like the new thing back then? Probably.
I feel like he even did changes from like theatrical to the VHS. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty much the only way to really see it is if you would have saw it in theaters.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I don't think any of the changes really take away from any part of
I
the
mean,
story.
if you think about it, he made a change in like in 79, I want to say. He re-edited it when they released Empire Strikes Back. He already made a change. It's now called Episode 4, A New Hope,
Mm-hmm.
instead of
Yeah.
just Star Wars. So he made that change when he labeled, or they started making Empire Strikes Back. He changed the name because when it was released, it wasn't called A New Hope. It was called
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so one of those, and that what was really stunning to fans at that time was the Episode 4 title. People
Mm-hmm.
are like, wait, that's the first one we saw, and you're calling that Episode 4?
Yeah.
And that, to me, that's just an interesting way of telling a story, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of great. I was watching the Clone Wars with Kaloni the other day, and she's like, why are the episode order? Why is it so jumbled?
Mm-hmm.
And it just reminded me of a panel that Dave Filoni did, and his only answer was, George likes his prequels.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the only answer he could give of why it was like that. But
Yeah.
it's still fun and interesting. But this kind of goes to the question of, I don't know, it's been coming up a lot recently. Do the filmmakers, the directors, do they have the ability and the right to change their work? Because I know it's been talked about with Stranger Things recently. And they've even basically admitted that they have changed some stuff in the earlier seasons that no one's noticed. They've gone back
Mm-hmm.
and fixed some things, and supposedly they plan on doing that again because they did a little some mess ups in season 4.
Mm.
And so they basically said that they're going to be doing that. And I mean, George Lucas has been doing that forever, and that's the part of, I think, people really think that Disney, because Disney owns it and now they own Fox as well, they can release the original versions. But I don't know if they ever can legally. I almost guarantee you that George has it in the contract there that those are his movies. He fixed them in his mind. He edited them to the
Mm-hmm.
way he thought they should be made, and that's the way that they should be, and that the theatrical version wasn't his vision. Of course, obviously it wasn't his vision just because he couldn't do as much as he wanted to. You think about all the effects that they did, and he still couldn't do what he wanted to.
Yeah.
And then
Mm-hmm.
so I'm pretty sure there's probably some kind of contract in there that says they're not allowed to release them.
Yeah. And
The
I think
original.
the thing with George, and I think he's said it multiple times, but he was an editor, before he was a filmmaker. He like that's how he kind of got into it, right? So that's his first thing is, he really pays attention to the edits. So I think that's a passion of his. And so I think that also kind of plays into him always wanting to change things. I know since you brought it up, like the McClunky, I think it was like at least three different changes. And I think that one of them was because the character that he wanted to portray of Han Solo eventually wasn't, the, you know, shoot first type of cold blooded mercenary. He
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that he didn't want to portray him as, yeah, the smuggler, the hard-nosed killer. And so then that does go through the argument, well, Han shot first. And yeah, but who are we to say? That's George's movies. That's his art. At this point, yeah. Sorry, I kind of took over because you disappeared for a little bit, but I can hear you, but there's no video. Yeah. Yeah, and hey, and just Star Wars in the chat there says that he thinks that there's a contract that Disney can't touch the first 6 movies, and I kind of am. I believe that is true as well. Apparently, they can't hear you on the stream. Just if you're still there. Gotcha. Yeah, I don't. You're not showing up on the
You want
OBS
to
either.
restart your video, Ninja? Would that help? Maybe we tried that.
Yeah, we're trying to work on getting Josiah back.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
we've
feel
been
like
having some technical difficulties today. Apologies.
the whole idea behind being able to change the movies later on, it's definitely a touchy subject. But I feel like any Star Wars fan should respect that this is George's universe. We have George to thank for all of this that we get to enjoy. So without him, we wouldn't have any of it to begin with. And it's his vision that is continuing to grow. So I feel like if he thinks that something needs to be changed, that we should be listening to what he says.
Yeah, and it goes along the goes with, it was his vision, and even Dave Filoni has, I think it was Dave, or maybe it was Jon Favreau, has said that George created the playground, and the creators nowadays are just playing in what George created.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, there you are.
I'm back.
Yeah, okay,
Hello
I
there.
see you.
What Obi-Wan always says.
Nice. You get a little glow.
Yeah.
I could change. I
man.
could change my lights to blue.
No, yeah, I think I'm with Quinton there. You know, I don't see any problem with, you know, a filmmaker after seeing the completed work saying that's not the way I wanted it to be portrayed, or this wasn't my original vision, or something like that, and changing it. I mean, I know Star Wars is probably even more of a touchy one, because, you know, maybe some of those specific parts, I mean, it's a big passion for so many people, but I think, you know, also sometimes the parts that are changed, you know, it's kind of in a way changing maybe like your childhood, or, you know, some of like the memories that you had first loving and falling in love with Star Wars. But yeah, the way I look at it is, if George looks back and says, oh, that's not the way I wanted that, or, hey, I think it'd be like, my original vision was, you know, to have these animals walking around, and I just didn't have the funds or the ability to do it, so I'm going to add that. Or,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know, like, I want to have Han Solo step on Jabba's tail, you know, like, do it, you know, like, I'm totally fine with it. You know, if he sees his finished work and feels like he can better it in some way, or he wants to change it a little bit so that a character is viewed in a different light, I'm totally fine with it.
And I think it's a little bit different on a project where, you know, this person writes it, this person directs it, this person, you know, funds it, whatever. But when it's George wrote it, George directed it, George, it's all, you know, it's his creation. You know, George's headcanon is the one that matters, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's his baby, it's his project. I don't feel like if his vision says, oh, it needs to look like this and not like that, it'll only look like that because it was 1977 and my team had to build a computer the size of a room to make it look like it did.
Yeah.
And I would go along with that. The same reason George asked Steven Spielberg and Ron Howard to direct the prequels, and they both said no. And they said, no, this is your baby. You know you want to do it. You just eat, because I think what's his name? Who directed Return of the Jedi?
Oh, that's
it's Richard something. Yeah, right.
Richard Branson.
No, not him. But I think he had said that with working with George, even though
Richard Marquand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even with him being the director, George was always there, and he said it was kind of hard to direct because it's really George that's the boss.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, and that is another thing. That's why Spielberg and Ron Howard told him no, and said, "No, this is your baby. You need to do it." And in fact, I've also seen people ask Spielberg if he would do a Star Wars movie now that it's part of Disney. And he said, "Nope, that's George's baby. I wouldn't play in that playground." That isn't stopping him from doing another Indiana Jones movie, but him and George worked on that together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That was both of theirs, their projects.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which that one will be fun. I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
A big reason why George had he used other directors after A New Hope is because he was under so much stress filming A New Hope that he nearly had a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
It was the doctor said he was in bad shape from all of his stress and anxiety from filming it, and that's kind of why he went that direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was also a new dad at that point, and so they had a lot going on. Yeah, well, I mean, I can't imagine the amount of work that goes in to these kind of movies. Especially, I feel like it's probably not as much work as it used to be. Probably used to be a lot more work,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and now when you say I want to design the ship, you just write up an email and send it over to the guys in the design department into
Yeah.
ILM, and then they make something. You know,
Mhm.
Yeah, they make a rendering of it on a computer program
yeah.
Yeah.
instead of like
For
here's what
sure.
it looks like. Make a model out of nothing.
Mhm.
Find some
That's one of the cool
scraps. Make a
things.
model.
It's one of the
Mhm.
things is like this movie in particular, A New Hope, changed cinema forever. Changed the way movies were made
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
and everything, especially all the special effects. And it's one of the reasons why for the time period, Star Wars has always been the best looking movie. You want to look at some movies with CGI from '99?
Yeah.
You know, you could complain about some of the stuff that's in the Phantom Menace, but it doesn't even compare. You can't even compare
Mhm.
them. They're so much better than a lot of the movies that did that, and that's what he did with this. The That's one of the things that Star Wars has always done right is move cinema forward.
Mhm.
It was the idea wasn't just to make a great movie. It was also how can we do this better? How can we do this with the same quality but cheaper? That's what George's
Mhm.
idea was with the CGI. You know, uh, I think Kathleen Kennedy said when they started doing The Mandalorian that it was George's dream, and that's kind of the volume was his dream of because he had said that someday people would be able to make these movies in their garage,
Mhm.
and that was the idea. And that was the point of the CGI and pushing it forward and all of his tech and the way they did everything. And just, I mean, you think about how the space battles were done with models
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
and how they're overlaid. And it's just, we come from a time where everything is so much simpler because
Yeah.
it's mostly just done on on a computer.
Mhm.
And you think of the work and the time it took to make that stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the other thing though too to think about is the fact that George, whether it was making A New Hope or really in any of his films, like up into his most recent work that he's done, is he is on top of everything. He knows
Mm-hmm.
everything that's going on.
He's a
You know,
micromanager.
yeah, big time. You know, like I think it's
I think
difficult
he's
for
also a
him to.
perfectionist as well.
Yes, that's what it is. I think in a way that is awesome that he does that. I mean, not maybe for his health, but since he is a perfectionist, he does final sign-offs and stamps on everything. So it's him. You know, like so he's not saying, "Oh, you did this bad. You did this bad." And I almost feel like that's why he edits his movies after because he's so hard on
Mm-hmm.
himself and he's like, "I made this mistake." Not, oh, this, you know, this department didn't do what I wanted or this did. He's like, I signed off on every single piece of this movie, down to the piece of clothing, to, you know, dialogue or anything. Like he's the one that said yes. And so when he sees it at the end, he's like, I made a mistake. I need to fix it. And I think that's why for a lot of the people, you know, in the different departments that, you know, help make these movies come to life, I don't think that anybody feels bad about it. You know, like, I don't think that they're like, hey, you took something I worked hard and now you're going to change it. I think they all feel like they're helping George bring it to life. You know, it's not like it's theirs.
I think that is also the reason why George sold it to Disney. Because I've always thought, you know, he could have just said, hey, J.J. Abrams, want to make a Star Wars, want to make Star Wars Episode 7?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't believe George could do that. At the very least, even if he had hired directors and hired all these people to do it, he's going to still come down every day and go, no, that doesn't fit mine. Nope, we got to do it this way. And and so I think that was him wanting for new movies to be done, but knowing that he can't be over it because this is, like we've talked about, it's his baby, it's his creation, and he can't be tired, basically, if people are still making Star Wars that he could have a say in.
Yeah. And I think, like, I love watching interviews of people who worked on Star Wars movies and how they felt about the project and everything like that. And I really love, like, when you get into, like, the art design of it, maybe the look of a character, an alien, or what they're wearing, things like that. And I love it. Really, like, brings home this point about George. I love when, because it's so rare, even to them, they're shocked when they're like, I created this thing and it actually went, and like, it happened. You know, like, I did this thing and George didn't say no. He didn't change it, like, at all. You know, like, it just goes to show you, like, George was over every single thing. Maybe some artists did a pretty close rendering, but he still tweaked it here and there. But there was a few moments where, you know, someone created something and it went all the way to the final movie. And even them, they were shocked. Like, I created this, you know, out of, like, his ideas, and it actually went. George didn't say change this or change that. He was like, okay, looks good. You know, and yeah, it just goes to show, you know, George was over every single piece.
Yeah, that's just what Just Star Wars said in the chat. Yeah, he was constantly over anything, and I think he's satisfied with his 6 films. And yeah, I would agree. I think, and he just the stuff that he came up with, even in, like, the Clone Wars and everything. This I just realized this episode is just becoming a George Lucas episode. But I mean, we're talking about Star Wars, so isn't everything?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it's this episode because it's talking about the movie that started it all, right?
Yeah.
And they put so in every episode of anything, The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi show, one of the very first title cards at the end says based on Star Wars by George Lucas. So, I mean, he gets credit. Anything that's created in this universe, basically, he gets credit for, whether he had a part in it or not.
Yeah, but if you think about it, anything that Dave touches has influence, massive influence from George.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the same way for Favreau too.
Yeah.
Anything that they are, I mean, obviously all of it's been influenced by George, but Dave specifically learned at the hand of George while he's doing the Clone Wars. I think George had a lot of input on that show, and Dave was there, you know, discussing and leading that show with him all the time. I think
that another thing too is that Favreau is more the original trilogy kind of guy and likes the older stuff, whereas Dave goes, nope, I worked with George on the prequels and here's what he was saying, And so this is kind of, so they have a good mixture, I think.
Yeah, I
Whereas,
think, like you're saying, Favreau has a more love for the original trilogy, but
yeah,
Dave sees the universe as a whole.
yeah, and I think that goes a little to my point of where JJ was an original trilogy fan, and I don't think he liked the prequels at all. I think it's kind of one of those things. He says the very first line in his movie is, "This will begin to make things right."
Yeah,
And the more I hear that, the more I hate that line. But
because it's JJ kind of fix what George Lucas did. Like, how do you fix what George Lucas did? It's obviously doesn't need fixing if it's George's.
we still don't see or hear you, Josiah. That's so weird. So yeah, and George was saying so much about these movies, and he tells such an interesting tale, especially in the original trilogy. I like how he was able to take A New Hope, which is I think Presto had said it, but it's one of the better movies you could watch one off.
Yeah, for sure.
Without any prior knowledge of anything, and because it's just the coming of age adventure story, and I like that he was able to take that movie, which in itself is a complete movie, but also make it the first part of a trilogy.
I like that. Just Star Wars saying this will begin to make things right should be the first line if they ever do a new trilogy. That's, yeah, I can totally agree with that.
Are you still there, Josiah? Or? Oh man. But okay, with that, you guys want to start wrapping it up then? Since Josiah is having technical issues, which kind of it sucks, but you know, we all have to deal with it. Such as life and technology.
Yep.
So I just want to say yeah, he says he talked a lot less now. So as we mentioned before, thank you so much for everyone that's joined us. Please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Also join our Discord server. It's a good community, fun community, lighthearted. As most of you know, we try to keep everything positive, especially when it comes to Star Wars, because it can get negative sometimes. So even if we don't have, even if say the sequels aren't our favorite, we still try to find the positive. In Star Wars, there's always something. I can always find something to enjoy in Star Wars, and so join our Discord there, and we have good discussions. You can ask us questions. I think and ask us questions there that might be able to answer on the show. Also, you can support us on Patreon as well. We do have our first members. Togo Bap was our hero, and he is our first member. And also, Josiah's got his Twitter down there if you want to give him a follow. Also, shout out to his son's YouTube channel there, Hezekiah's Toys and Games. Also, Q, you want to shout out what all your other.
Yeah, I just once again want to thank everybody for stopping by. Just Star Wars. It's nice to see you in chat. Um, I've got my Twitter there, Crazy Quinton. You can follow me on Twitch. I play all kinds of different games, strategy games, FPS. I will definitely have a focus on Star Wars games, especially with some of the new ones coming out here in the future. And I also have my own gaming YouTube channel. It's called Crazy Q Gaming. If you want to check that out, I do post some videos from my streams and such there. Again, thanks everybody for stopping by.
Yep, and I'm just gonna plug my stuff as well. You can give me a follow on Twitter. At Twitch, I'm Darth Canuck, and my YouTube channel is Darth Canuck as well. And it's mostly games. Some could be some other stuff as well. Some adventures, just videos I like to post. If you just want to hang out, go ahead and please give a subscribe. And yeah. Anything else you want to say?
Yep. I want to just ask you, Tyler, what does Obi-Wan always say?
He says, "May the Force be with you, always."
Always.